Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first CyberX event in the Middle East. This is your host, Samer Adi. I am the CISO for Goodfood company in Canada. I would like to welcome our panelists today to speak about how you can secure your data. So I have with me Omar from EY, also Haider Pasha from Palo Alto, and Kamran Ahsan from Etisalat. I will give them the chance to present themselves and speak about their name, role, and what certification they have in this domain, and then we will kick it off from there. So I will start with Omar.
Thanks a lot, Samir. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Omar Sherin. I'm working for EY as a cybersecurity partner, specialized in data protection and critical infrastructure protection. More than 16 years of experience, many sectors, government, oil and gas, as well as national cybersecurity. In terms of certifications, I have lots of them. I can name a few, such as SANS or ISO or ISAC as certifications. So it's my pleasure to be here and join this distinguished panel, and looking forward to be as much as of benefit as I can. Thank you, Samir.
Haider?
Hi, everyone. So my name is Haider Pasha. I'm the Chief Security Officer for Palo Alto Networks. I specifically look after Northeastern Europe as well as Middle East and Africa. Been with the company for about 2 years and spent about 5 years at Symantec as their CTO for emerging markets, and then about 15 years at Cisco, also in various roles and capacities, both based out of Dubai, which is home for me. And before that, I spent about 10 years in the US as well. So in terms of certifications, I've been in the cybersecurity industry more than 20 years. So I think I've had my fair share of, I would say, the majority of them. So, Cisco had their own, CCIE being one of them. There's the ISC squared, the CISSP, CISM, all of those. So, it's, I think, more than certifications, it's also just the fact that there's a lot of breadth of cybersecurity knowledge, and I'm looking forward to the conversation today. And thanks for the invite, Samer.
You're welcome, Haider. Cameron?
Thanks, Samir. A very good day to all of our viewers and listeners. Kamran Ahsan, I work for Etisalat as a Senior Director in Etisalat Digital. It's the business unit of Etisalat as a telecom operator. And we are responsible for assisting our customers, government, private, and small to medium enterprises, and during their transformation journey in the digital world through our skill sets, platforms, operating models, and managed services that we have built as part of the ecosystem. I've been in the security for the last 25 years, almost now, been surfing in the ocean for quite a while. Worked in Pakistan, Canada, and as well as in Middle East, associated with Etisalat for the last 7 years. Working in Dubai for the last 14 years, serving again government sector, private sector, startups, and service provider organizations. So I'm very excited to be here. Thanks very much, CyberX, for this honor, and looking forward to this conversation. So back to you, Samer.
Thank you, guys. So let's start our conversation actually about something that I would love to get the feedback from the three of you guys on the same question. Then we will go with the question and answer per each. But being in the Middle East and specifically in the GCC area, now, what can you give us about the state of the affairs and regarding of the data security, especially that each one of you guys is living in a different country in GCC? And we can start with Haider.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think the state of data security generally has been quite well evolved, I would say, in the Middle East, especially because when you look at the rate or the pace of digitization and the pace of change that a lot of businesses are focused on, I think governments across the GCC, I mean, I'll handpick UAE in this particular case because that's where I reside. But specifically in the UAE, I mean, they've looked at how to help businesses expand and be more agile and have better business services for their customers. And one of the challenges they've run into, I would say, especially in the last, I'd say probably about the last 3 to 5 years, is the cloud. When we build and when we create data and when we do all the various different processes that data essentially has in terms of its life cycle, the challenge is when you start moving that data to the cloud, it operates in a different way. It's stored in a different way. So one of the challenges we have, and one of the key things that the governments are, I think, around this region are really looking into very seriously is how can we open up our data residency policies? How can we allow businesses to store data on the cloud or public cloud, to be more specific? And for some regions or some segments inside of those countries, when you look at finance or when you look at government, you'll find that they're a lot more restrictive. But when you look at commercial organizations or retail, for example, they're a little bit more open. So the policies change quite drastically, I think, as you move towards different segments. To give you some examples, specifically in the UAE, here I think we're very strongly centered around the TRA, or the Telecom Regulatory Authority. They have a cybercrime federal law number 5 that essentially pertains to everybody, and that cybercrime law is sort of you could say, the foundation of everything we do. But then when you start venturing into the different sort of cities, Dubai, for example, has their data law, and even within Dubai and some of the free zones will have their own. DIFC has their own. So as a business, you have to kind of take a step back and figure out where you operate, and then look at the specific regulations that reside in each of those, specific locations. And, if you're a finance, again, you would obviously be focused more towards the central bank guidelines or regulations that they have. I think generally when we look at data, the biggest challenge right now is we cannot send data outside of the country. And I think one of the key challenges we have in terms of regulation is we as businesses need to understand what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, in that regard as well. So understand the regulations, I think, a little bit better is really the key message there from a data perspective.
Interesting. Actually, the data residency is the same issue, I will say, or topic everywhere we go. Even in certain countries, we have data residency within the same province. So you cannot even go to another province within the same country. So it's a very long topic that we can talk about it for a very long time. Kamran, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think I would agree with Haider's initial take on the Middle East and more specifically GCC and more specifically UAE. I think this region has been a happening place from a business perspective because of the government proactiveness. I think you can find all sorts of Guinness Book of World Records there. For example, retail, entertainment, expos, tourism and whatnot, skyscrapers. I mean, you must be listening about, what has been happening here. And I think this is where the challenge is because all those technologies, and especially from cybersecurity perspective, it's very difficult to cope up with the business changes, which has been happening here. And that's why this region has become a prime target for all those malicious activities because of its high-profile nature. If we take a look at one of the surveys done by Gartner last year, towards the end of last year, 95% of the CIOs they stated that yes, they have a fear that the cybersecurity threat landscape is going to go worse. And I think the cost of data breach report for this year has substantiated the fact. And the problem is that the cost of data breach in this region is 15% higher for most of the rest of the world. And I think for this region is almost $6.5 million, which is the second highest after US. So all these facts are I think intertwined. The more the business activities, the more the high profile nature, ideal playground for all those malicious activities. And that's why I think this region has been so interesting, and the CISOs of this region has, they have a lot of fish to fry. They have a lot of balls to juggle. So I think, in my opinion, cybersecurity has been taking twists and turns at each and every corner of the business changes, and this is what is keeping us on our toes and keeping us alive.
Okay, good. Omar.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think it's a very interesting question. I would have to say that, in my personal view, the data protection agenda has been driven here in the region by three main factors. Number one, the push for national programs such as smart cities, which we are seeing across the whole region. Second, tourism and big events like the Expo or the World Cup, and those events are totally smart, which requires very advanced, ways of protecting such critical data. And the third element is the geopolitics that is happening across the region and the need for every country to protect its own data sovereignty. What the new dynamic is that many of the public cloud providers are opening hubs in the region, whether it's Google, Amazon, or Microsoft. All of them are opening centers in the region within the next 18 months. So it's coming very fast. And that pushes the governments to start figuring out what to do exactly and what's allowed, what's not allowed. So I think we will see a lot of changes in the next 18 months.
Okay, good news actually. I like the idea of those big players coming to the GCC and having their hubs there. This is good. So now, Kamran, I want to come back to you, and I want to get your view on holistically how you secure the security of the data, the life cycle of the data, and how you approach those two issues together.
Yeah, I think this challenge of data security, because of all those phenomenal changes happening across the business world and technological world, I think as CISOs or individuals responsible for safeguarding the security posture of our respective organizations, we need to again take a holistic look. And one of the most effective ways is to take a look at the data life cycle. I mean, what are those stages through which data itself passed through? And I think let's start with the data ingestion or data creation, whereby systems, people and processes and things these days have started creating those, any form of data. And this is where, I would say one of the most opportune moment to identify data, classify it, identify the access control, that who's going to access this kind of data, what, how, and when. And this is the stage whereby I think us as CISOs have a bigger, much bigger role to play, so that we can invoke, based upon these guidelines or policies and procedures, the respective enabling technologies. The second part is that, as we discuss about data storage, we discuss about data residency aspects as well. And this is where we store data. Data storage is one of those, again, I would say unique stages whereby you started applying those policies and procedures in terms of that how data at rest can be treated. It could be encryption, it could be something else. It could be that who is going to access what. Digital rights management kind of a thing. Data residency is one of those challenges that we need to address that. And then comes the most interesting aspect of data lifecycle, whereby we start using that data, manipulating it, aggregating that, and adding more and more meaning back to our business. And this is where various stakeholders, various personas come into play. And again, we tend to apply those role-based access control or other forms of access control depending upon the data classification. Once you manipulate that, I think the other aspect is that the other requirement is to share it. And this is where, again, once the data is shared, then we need to start actively monitoring it. What are those aspects or scenarios whereby legitimate users are doing legitimate activities, but what about legitimate users are doing illegitimate activities, kind of an aspect. And this is where that concept of data leak prevention will again come into play. So I think that sharing concept, collaborating, communication, connectedness, all those aspects. And as guys responsible for information security or cyber security need to have a closure look that where else data is going to be shared. I remember 2-3 years ago, there was a concept of shadow IT, and that's why we have a concept of access brokers, cloud access security brokers come into play. And absolutely important that as CISOs, guys responsible for information security, we should keep track of all those blind spots here. And then comes the archival, because it depends upon the industry vertical. Banking, for example, would have a separate requirement for archival. But again, archival, we need to treat data as an asset. We all know that this is a new currency here. It is a new oil as we define it, especially in the Middle East. And then comes the last but not the least step, which is the data destruction or disposal. Again, a very important aspect which normally we would tend to ignore that, because absolutely important that especially the most critical data needs to be actually being treated as per the policies. Data destruction or device destruction or crypto shredding. And the other important aspect which I've observed in the last 2-3 years, that once you dispose of the data, there is an opportunity of having a rebirth of the data, because you tend to anonymize it. You tend to use it for your experiments, for example, data lakes or data analysis kind of thing. And again, you come back to the stage one. So I think during all these 5 or 6 stages, absolutely important for us that we tend to analyze one of those stages. And back to our business, we should try to align the concept of data classification, access control, and whatever is associated with that, with those policies as part of this data lifecycle management. So, I mean, this is my take on the overall data security aspects.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So Haider, coming back to you, you spoke about adoption to the cloud, and that now data residents, they have an issue within the cloud adoption. But from your opinion, what do you think the new dimensions of the data lifecycle as the cloud adoption is in the rise?
Yeah, I think, and it's a good question. I think one of the things we have to first consider, Samir, is every organization goes through essentially 3 journeys to the cloud. And each of those journeys sometimes are happening at the same time, sometimes they're sequential. The 3 journeys are the following. The first journey is, of course, having people connect remotely using cloud services. Now, as a result of COVID, we see more than 90% of our employees essentially requiring to connect back in from the offices. Now, with lockdowns in certain countries coming back in, again, that's a key challenge. So when we think about the cloud in that first instance, we have to think about how do we, make sure that we're protecting the connection, which is obviously usually traditionally VPN. But then how do we ensure that the people in those sites and their remote, offices, if you will, or their home offices, essentially have the same cybersecurity capabilities as if they were in the office. And so this whole concept around secure access service edge that Gartner calls SASE has really taken quite a rise. And I think, the focus really is to get the same security as well as networking capabilities to those remote users. So that's the first journey. The second journey is in the SaaS. And again, organizations are very focused on trying to make sure that people have the right access to tolerated SaaS applications, and they can sanction the ones that are not tolerated. And again, it's difficult because you've got people moving around, and you've got obviously challenges around making sure that there's create a great amount of sovereignty when it comes to the data and the applications that are being used. And then the third is a traditional sort of public cloud journey, right? Which is where, as Omar said earlier, we have Azure that's opened up their offices or their data center in the UAE, and GCP is doing something, and AWS in Bahrain. So the focus there is, how do we ensure that we're getting the right level of security to data from a data perspective as it's moving to the cloud? How do we ensure the data is protected in the cloud, whether it's sitting in a workload, whether it's in a container, in a serverless architecture? How do we ensure that data is kind of following the right path? And then how do we ensure a single pane of glass when it comes to governance across all 3 of the journeys I've just described, and actually having a CISO kind of take a step back and say, I understand the risk. I followed the sort of the data lifecycle that Kamran just mentioned earlier, which is the same lifecycle, by the way, that you follow in the cloud. It's just you do it slightly more differently. I mean, for example, if I'm creating data, unlike the traditional approach, I'm not creating that data on-prem. I'm not on-prem. I'm creating that data probably on the cloud, and I'm sitting remotely, right? So it's a different mindset, but the principles and the security, I would say, capabilities are still the same. And so we've got to look at it from more of a strategic point of view, and we have to look at it more from a governance point of view to ensure that, versus going in and looking at different perhaps cybersecurity vendors for each of the 3 journeys, I can build out a holistic cloud security or native cloud security platform that helps me on that journey. And then the last point I'll also mention is, we're seeing an increase in the concept of zero trust. And again, for those of the viewers that aren't familiar with the concept, it's essentially the ability for you to do that data classification or asset classification that Kamran talked about just now, but do it in a form where you know where your crown jewels are and you protect your crown jewels first. You apply the visibility around those crown jewels and you put the controls around those crown jewels before you look outward. And once you do that, once you've got that micro segmentation capability done, then you start looking at other areas and you start expanding. And it's a journey. There's no product for zero trust. This is absolutely a journey. But the point I'm bringing it up now is because when you look at the cloud and how the dynamics of the cloud have changed, organizations are now looking to build that zero trust policy that they're now building on-prem in the cloud as well. And that's, I think, going to be one of the key focuses as we look in the next year or so.
Okay. Excellent. So Omar, coming back to you now with the governing laws and the regulation, the current ones and the upcoming ones, especially for the privacy, that they will hit the door very soon. So from that perspective or on that lens, how you'll work on a daily basis will change as a security professional moving forward.
No, thanks a lot, Samir. I think we can't talk about data protection and data security without bringing the privacy agenda in the picture. For many years, the region have resisted adapting public clouds because of one of the main problems were, first, those data centers were in Europe or in the US, subject to different national laws, subject to different data privacy laws. Now with the centers coming into the region, and in some countries, we will have the 3 providers or 2 of the 3 providers in the same market. That brings a new dynamic to the equation. What's interesting to see is that probably 90% of the GCC and MENA countries have chosen the path of developing their own standards. And now we have standards in Saudi, standards in UAE, even at a city level or emirate level. We have standards in Oman, national standards, we have standards in Qatar. And we are seeing now data protection and data privacy laws in at least 4 countries. So now UAE have a data privacy law, Qatar has a data privacy law, Jordan has a privacy law, and Egypt as well. So, and I think Saudi is working, Kuwait is working as well. So probably in the next six months or to 12 months, maybe delayed because of COVID, but in the normal speed of things, in 1 year, probably all GCC countries will have their own data privacy laws. What those laws are based on, and we have reviewed most of them, first, they adapt the core principles of GDPR, but they add some sort of 2 main requirements. Number 1, you must do data classification. It's now a responsibility of the decision maker or the CISO to make his own data classification, and based on it, decide what goes and what doesn't go. The second thing that the laws are trying to fix is a chronic problem we had in the region. Many of the public cloud providers that we have, when you go through the contract, the arbitration is in a foreign court. And that always brings a new issue, a legal problem to CISOs and companies and governments. Because as a government, I can't put my data in another country or with a service provider. And then if there's a problem, I seek arbitration in a third country. That doesn't work. So those laws, what are they trying to create? They are trying to create the legal foundation that to protect data, you have national laws. If there's a problem, the local courts are the responsible ones. As a customer, you have rights and you have also responsibilities. So those laws are very, very important because they set the scene and they infuse principles such as, let's say, the right to be forgotten or, the retention periods or the technical controls that must be there, which companies and citizens must be aware of. Now, because this transcends the business side, it goes into the personal side as well. It's our data, it's our personal data. We need to be, let's say, wary of this and be responsible and have interest as a community in
access control and data security, and then accordingly allow me to access those specific solutions or specific applications so that I can do my business. So I think these kind of technological controls on enablement is absolutely important. We have been witnessing a rise in ransomware, for example. So I think the concept of backups has to have. Probably we may have forgotten in the in the midst of all these recent and quick challenges. But that rule of 3-to-1 of backups offline and offsite, and whatever it is, has to be reapplied and has to be re-looked into. The other aspect are the all those multi-factor authentication, which again is going to be complementing those concepts of SaaS-E, whereby we go into the cloud policy enforcement, but it has to be a multi-factor authentication so that I can be recognized, and then accordingly being providing the authorization of that. Organization approved products. We have seen that a lot of collaboration, a lot of video conferencing is happening, and this is one of those instances. But we have seen a lot of other security malicious events happening to some of the famous platforms in the world. So what are those organizationally acceptable platforms which can enable the telecommuting practices, video conferencing, and all those things associated with that? Patching and vulnerability management, again, has taken a new turn, because my laptop or my personal device is a new kid in the block. It could be my personal thing. I was just utilizing the consumer grade licensing, but I think that we need to move on to the enterprise grade licensing towards my personal laptop, because this is the only thing through which I'm doing all those business as usual activities. So I think patching, vulnerability management, and the other aspect that we have seen as part of the last 6 to 8 months, as part of the pandemic, is all those business email compromise activities, because now the guys sitting in their respective homes and areas, they are socially disconnected. There could be a mental stability problem as well. And industry has been talking a lot, especially security analysts who have been confined themselves doing 24/7 security operations. So I think all those aspects of domain-based message authentication from email perspective is also one of those. Again, it is all about security fundamentals 101. But I think those fundamentals need to be re-looked into, revisited, and then redeployed from fresh set of eyes. Last but not the least, we have been talking about teleworker. I think as an individual, this is my prime responsibility, because we all carry respective responsibilities. We all are risk managers, irrespective of our responsibilities. So I think this is my personal job, abiding by the rules and regulations that we have talked about in the first phase. That how can I make sure that my home network is safe? That Wi-Fi password, which I haven't changed for the last 5 years, is this password being strong enough, for example? SSID, I have been projecting it. That SSID is identifying my router configuration, for example, because that router is standard router. And I haven't changed my default username and passwords. So that is that has become my new responsibility, because my new data center is my home now. So all those teleworking things, and then as a teleworker, if I get to see something suspicious, what are those processes through which I can always call back my service desk agent or security operations center to actually report that specific incident? What are those initial steps so that I can unplug myself from the rest of the world as part of a precautionary measure, and to damage, to control the damage? So I think all these aspects from strategic perspective, from technical perspective, and from individual perspective would give you a good sound strategy towards the teleworking thing aspects, which has become the part and parcel of our life these days. So this is my take on that, Samir.
I like your statement about my data center become my endpoint. I will use it many times, believe me in that one.
Yeah.
Haider, from your perspective, I know that this could be a yes or no question, but I want more details from your side. Is the cloud computing at the moment is a safe place for businesses to conduct business, actually?
Yeah, it's a loaded question, Samir. I'll tell you that. So the short answer is yes. But let me explain yes with the details now. So I want to go back to what Kamran just mentioned. I think a lot of the best practices that he just talked about are absolutely things that we need to incorporate as part of a wider strategy before we do anything. Because some of those things, we looked at remote teleworkers as one example, but the strategies around understanding where your data is, understanding where the assets are, protecting all of that. All of those are important areas, even when we start looking towards cloud. The first thing we need to understand is that the future of network security is going to be in the cloud, because more and more, whether we like it or not, more and more organizations will start adopting cloud. Governments, as Omar just said, are going to start re-looking at regulations. We also believe that within the next roughly 12 to 18 months, we're going to start to see some laws come in that will not only, in some cases, have use GDPR as sort of the standard, but then they will add on their own capabilities around cloud. I think what COVID has done for many of us, especially in the cybersecurity industry, is really opened the eyes for the governments to actually look at cloud a lot more seriously and look at it more from a business enabler and not a blocker. So let me talk about strategy for a second. When I look at, if I'm a business and I want to adopt the cloud, and going back to your question around whether it's safe or not, what are some of the questions that I would ask? The first thing I need to know is I need to understand this whole concept around the shared responsibility model. I need to understand that I'm responsible for my data. The cloud service provider is not responsible for my data, so they're responsible for their infrastructure. I need to make sure that that connotation is very clear, and I need to read the fine print, because different CSPs will probably have different views of how the shared responsibility model works. So depending on who I go to, that's the first thing I need to look at. And of course, I need to follow the basics. I mean, I can talk all day about all the various technologies that you can deploy, but ultimately it's around user behavior, it's around user awareness, it's around obviously cybersecurity and following the best practices that people should make. So once I've identified the basics and I've identified the shared responsibility model, the next thing I need to look at is almost kind of ask myself a couple of key questions. The first is, what kind of data do I want to send? Is it going to be critical business data, or is it going to be non-critical business data? And if it's non-critical, then where do I want to store it? If it's critical, of course, the question remains as well. I start looking at my options from a cybersecurity perspective. Most of the CSPs, in fact, I think all of the CSPs will tell you that they have inherently built some form of cloud security solutions, right? That you can absorb from them itself. So very native to that particular provider. And again, looking at whether I want to go with a single cloud or a multi-cloud environment, I may or may not choose, that option. If I go multi-cloud, of course, then I can't go native, because then the security solutions don't get mapped across multi-cloud environments. The other option I have from a cybersecurity perspective is I do it myself. So I have an excellent, applications team. Perhaps they can do something from a security perspective. That's a lot more costlier and it takes a lot more time. Open source tools is another option, which again, I think is a recipe for disaster. And then the fourth option is really for me to then look at those cybersecurity vendors that can do, cloud security. And now we're talking about the CASBs of the world, or Cloud Access Security Broker, the cloud workload protection providers of the world. And now I start getting more ingested into what are the solutions I want and where do I want them. And I think fundamentally the biggest problem and the biggest, going back to your original question, the biggest challenge that we will face is this, which is, do I go with the point product siloed approach to doing cloud security like I've perhaps been doing at the network layer, or do I go with a single platform that can allow me to actually build out a proper cloud security strategy? And I think this is the key focus that I think a lot of organizations are going to be challenged with. I think they're going to have to take a decision on, do I want a single pane of glass with the right level of governance? And perhaps it might not be the best, in the industry. And I'm not picking on anyone. I'm just saying it that might not be one area. Or do I want to go best of breed? I think, again, to answer that, you have to go back to why you're moving to the cloud. The first thing, and one of the challenges you will run into is visibility. So that's the question you need to ask is, how much visibility can I get back from my data? Then I need to look at control. What level of control will I have to that data? And again, Kamran talked about this data lifecycle. The biggest challenge in the cloud is deleting that data, right? Because when do you know that it's really deleted? And all of that is a critical element. So control of that data is going to be critical. And then the third, of course, being compliance, not just because of the government regulations, but even my own cybersecurity policies. If I can find a platform that allows me to do those three things, then I've got myself a good, ability to actually safely move to the cloud, and then that should increase obviously the level of confidence, in that cloud solution. I think that's ultimately what I would say. I think one of the other challenges that people very quickly get into is, besides looking at which cloud security providers they're focused on, is they rush to the cloud. So some organizations, especially during COVID, what we saw is they sort of had this lift and shift model where as people and as workers started going, and working from home, I saw a couple of organizations across the Middle East and Europe, for that matter, actually lift and shift, and they immediately realized that was the wrong direction. I'm speaking to a lot of organizations now. They're actually trying to come back from the cloud, which, by the way, is a lot more difficult. But they're actually trying to go through that painful process of now putting together a holistic cybersecurity strategy that looks at, the network, the cloud workloads, all the things we've just talked about, and all the basics before they can properly go back, to the cloud. So I'd say make sure you have your strategy right. Mm-hmm. Understand why you're doing what you're doing, and then pick the right model when it comes to cybersecurity, whether you want to go point product or whether you want to go, platform. I think that's what I would say.
Very, very good advice, actually. Omar, coming back to you and actually to discuss one of the very few benefits of the COVID. There's a lot of bad things about COVID, but there is also very few benefits, I would say. So adapting to the telecommuting workforce in many companies, including many of the big 500. So how does adoption affect your work as a security professional, I would say?
No, thanks a lot, Samir, for that question. And maybe for a minute before I take on that question, maybe a small follow-up to Haider's excellent summary. I think one of the issues that many companies are also realizing is the risk of a cloud vendor lock-in and how to get out if required. No one knows the future. If you need to swap cloud providers, what are the steps? People don't read the fine print, and most of the contracts we reviewed or the SLAs, there's let's say, a financial cost as well. You need to pay to get your data back. And to extract it in a certain format that you can, let's say, use it again in another service provider. And it's a painful process, like my colleagues were saying. So definitely that's something we need to consider when we choose our service provider, how to get in and how to get out if required. So that's one. On the question, which I think, if I can, let's say, summarize it again for the audience, it's what are the benefits of COVID-19 in pushing the agenda of teleworking and making it more, let's say, what the benefits, basically, what the positives that came out of this. I think what we saw is a huge and rapid adoption of teleconferencing, telepresence, remote working, that was, let's say, resisted for many, many years. Many companies in the last 6 months just completely moved their communication platforms to the cloud immediately. And I'm talking about thousands of people. And I know a couple of companies that they did this in 48 hours. They took that decision because they couldn't sustain business in COVID circumstances without this. So that's definitely a benefit, because the speed of operations, the level of collaboration, the features that the employees started to gain, the let's say the positive impact on the business, and that no interruptions were, let's say, suffered is huge. That's we need to thank COVID, if we can say that, because of this. Another element of importance as well, or benefit, was the work-life balance. I believe many companies are now considering seriously to sustain a hybrid model of going back to work. Do we need all the staff to be at home, at office all the time? Because the reality of the situation is that business is sustained with maximum cost reduction, in some cases better productivity during COVID. So for sure, the Fortune 5 companies, we're seeing lots of them coming out even publicly saying that they will sustain this model. They will give this flexibility back to the employees. Whoever wants to continue working from home can work, and whoever wants to come back can come back, because there's definitely benefit. And the surveys that they ran to their own staff and their own employees were overwhelmingly supporting that direction, that work from home flexibility. In terms of security, I think lots of cloud security assessments were requested. Lots of third-party solution for cloud security were tested, piloted, or acquired. Lots of data classification and data encryption and even public key infrastructure projects were launched to make sure that all the data is let's say, secure in a proper manner. Lots of awareness and program and trainings were launched to educate employees how to work from home safely, even starting from securing your endpoint, securing your home network, how you, let's say, work in a public office or public area. All of this were really, like, let's say, pushed in the next in the past 6 months. Another element we saw as well is the concept of business resilience. Many companies worked and reworked their business continuity plans and business resilience plans to cover this angle of what if I need to sustain this again for another year? What if there's wave 2 and wave 3? How would I, let's say, completely adopt this model and embrace it in such hard circumstances? So again, that was something companies always ignored, which is updating their business continuity plans and updating the release. They always thought this would never happen, but it happened. And companies that were prepared really succeeded. Companies who didn't suffered and struggled. And we can see that even in Europe, around 15 to 20% of small and medium companies shut down completely. They couldn't sustain and they couldn't operate, and they were out of business. That's a big number. Only the companies that were prepared and they have let's say, solid foundations for adapting cloud and teleworking managed to pass this phase.
Okay, excellent. And actually, this is a scary number, the number you mentioned about small and medium businesses, which actually can lead me to my next question to Kamran. Specifically for those two segments of businesses or entities, the small to medium, what is the best practices you can advise to them so they can secure their data? Big entities, they have too much money. They can hire big consultants, buy big technologies. But for the small and medium scale companies, how they can secure their environment in the best practice?
Yeah, thank you, Samir. I think excellent points raised by both Haider and Omar, and I think this is going to be a supplementary question. SMBs, especially in the Middle East region, I would say it's one of the most neglected sectors from cybersecurity perspective. If you took a look from the business side, at least from the statistics of the UAE, probably 80% of the economy of UAE is run by SMBs. This is before pandemic, probably the beginning of the first quarter of this year, statistics. I fully agree with the fact that some of the SMBs are not able to withstand the pressure, which that pandemic has brought in. But I think from cybersecurity perspective, it's absolutely important from the government perspective or from the other side of the world that we pay special attention to SMBs. They run the economy, the life and blood of most of the economies in the world, and cybersecurity is absolutely important. Why? Because most of the SMBs, they carry their own intellectual property. So absolutely important that how to safeguard that intellectual property. And we have seen some of the instances of ransomware, whereby the whole thing gets encrypted, and then comes the entire process of ransom demands and all those negotiations and whatnot. So I think absolutely important for SMBs is to, again, to stick to the mantra of do more with less. They don't have deeper pockets. We all understand that. They are, unlike enterprise, we should not be treating them as an enterprise, expecting them to open a service desk that when they have a problem, they should be calling me, because this is not what they can sustain. So I think SMB should go for certainly cloud adoption and some sort of bundling things whereby service providers are able to bundle not only the connectivity side of the world or the mobile phone or the cell phone, but how about bundling a cybersecurity firewall or a web filtering mechanism, or a small light version of SE for them, so that they can go to the cloud and then they, just like any enterprise, with much less cost-effective mechanism, they can enjoy the same benefits which enterprise has been utilizing it. I think this is one of those level of responsibilities which bigger organizations, especially telecom companies, can address that. We have been doing it for the last 1 year as a part of SMB transformation program. Ideal source of making sure that they have the visibility. But would they need cybersecurity, operations center? The answer is no. I think they need a template-based kind of, cybersecurity configuration as part of their firewalls, as part of their web filtering mechanisms, as part of their archiving and backups, in terms of catering for a ransomware thing. And last but not the least, SD-WAN is a new concept. Most of the SMBs have got branches over there. So one of those, I think, most unique ways of connecting to the branch level is through SD-WAN. So I think, and the most important thing, because I was just going through one of the surveys, of course, their budgets have been slashed. But one of the most interesting things is, as part of that survey, which is specific to SMB across the globe, is again the awareness of their employees. So again, going back to the first point that we discussed about the awareness, especially in terms of the policy, which that small company is going to be changing it, for example. So those employees need to abide by that. So I think these are the few of the things. So do more with less. Try to make full use of cloud-based security services. As Haider has mentioned, I think the same level of negotiations need to be made with your cloud service provider. It has to be a quick fix kind of an approach for SMBs. And I think SMBs don't need a high profile kind of a cybersecurity mechanisms to actually improve the security posture. It is security fundamentals, email security, web security, network security aspects, along with archiving and backups kind of thing. And then I think this is one of those most effective ways to withstand the pressure of pandemic and keep yourself afloat as part of this economic conditions.
Okay, excellent.
Maybe Samir, if I can add one point to Kamran.
Yes, sure.
Just 30 seconds. I think I agree totally that for SMEs, small and medium businesses or enterprises, security should be bundled in the basic offerings of any cloud service provider, especially for those companies. It's now, I don't think security should be seen as a luxury or as an optional item. You need to pay for it. It should be included in your basic offerings. We can't buy a car now without a safety belt or a airbag. It's not optional. You have to get it. It's part of the solution. Now security, I think, should be included as well. When I offer such a thing where data is handled, I need to secure it with the basics. It should be part of the package.
Yes, definitely, but it will not be for free. I can guarantee you that. It will be included in the price. So Haider, coming back to you, and since you work in a technology company, I will call it, or in a product company, from your perspective, what role technology will play to help entities securing their data?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think technology plays obviously the most critical role. Obviously, we have to talk about people and process at the same time as well. But since your question is focused more towards technology, I think what we need to do is perhaps take a step back and do a quick history lesson. 20 years ago, and for many of us that have been in the industry for more than a couple of decades now, you remember, or you will remember, that back then, cybersecurity was not, as we just said, top of mind for a lot of organizations. Back then, we had probably, I would say, probably about 40 to 50 cybersecurity vendors in the industry, which was certainly the case because I used to be based in San Francisco, and there's every year we have something called the RSA Cybersecurity Conference, which is sort of a gathering of like-minded cybersecurity vendors and practitioners all under one roof. So I remember my first one was back, I think it was 99 or 2000 timeframe. There were about 40, 50 cybersecurity vendors at the time. And I've been going to more or less every single RSA conference, in the last 20 years. And this year in February, when I was there, we had in total of about 3,500 cybersecurity vendors. So you can see the sort of the evolution and the drastic growth when it comes to just options. And what the other challenge we also are seeing is, as a CISO, and I'm an external-facing CISO at Palo Alto, so I share a lot of the best practices we do internally, and obviously help CISOs around the region, help them build their strategy. But if you look at the job description of the CISO, that's changed drastically as well. So again, 20 years ago, or even 15 years ago, or I would even argue in this region 10 years ago, the majority of our focus was on infrastructure, on endpoint, some level of application. And what we initially, in the early stages, called a monitoring service, which is now better known as a SOC, or a Security Operations Center. Mm-hmm. Those were generally the key focuses. But if I look at the job description of the focus or the capabilities of what CISOs are focused on today, I have to add GRC because of the regulations. I have to add ID access management, again, partly because of regulations. I have to add additional services that the security team needs to provide. I have to look at collaboration tools, content tools. I mean, we're looking at roughly 10 different domains, compute and storage, of course, for cloud, 10 different domains. Now, in each of those domains, I can argue that you would need different capabilities. Obviously, infrastructure, you would need, everything from firewalls to VPN to IPS and so on. ID access management, you need single sign-on, and the list goes on. But the point I'm making is, each one of those domains will, on average, require between 4 to 5 cybersecurity vendors to help you at a basic level complete your picture to secure your organization. And what I've just described is roughly 40 to 50 cybersecurity vendors, which, by the way, is the industry average for a mid to large size organization. Now, that's a lot of options and that's a lot of vendors, and they're not necessarily talking to each other. And as a CISO, my biggest pain point is I see a lot of not just volume of data and variety of data, but I need to now figure out where the risks are, and with this vendor fragmentation that I have to deal with, I have to come back with and really use technology to the right level, which frankly does not happen, and it doesn't happen enough. So to go back to your question now, the role that technology needs to play is it needs to make things simpler. It needs to be better integrated, and it needs to help automate a lot of the functions that the traditional SecOps team or the SOC team generally has to do. So I'll give you an example. When we build out, 40, 50 cybersecurity vendors in an environment, and we find ourselves with sort of Frankenstein's monster of a network, one of the biggest challenges the SOC has is they're dealing with all these different varieties of and volumes of data that's coming in. There is generally no automation in that process. They have to deal with the incident. They have to tune out the incident. They have to investigate and go through a typical incident management lifecycle to actually get to some level of response at the end. The playbook that they use is very manual. And so technology helps by automating, not just using technologies like security orchestration and response, but also turning on the prevention capabilities in the appliances or the devices from a cybersecurity perspective that you have, such that it actually prevents beforehand, before the log even reaches the SOC. And so that's one kind of example. I think just to close off, because I can see we're going to be running low on time, I think focus on the strategy, I would say, more before you focus on the technology. Understand who's sponsoring cybersecurity. Focus on the organization culture, the governance and structure is important there. Focus on your policies from a people perspective, regulation perspective. Focus on your processes for your supply chain, access management, data classification, all the things we've just talked about today for the cloud, and then focus on technology. Once you get the upper layers right, then you'll figure out which vendor, which technology, and what level of integration that you need, so you don't fall under the vendor fragmentation trap.
Okay. Excellent. So Omar, we'll give you the chance for the last, I would say, statement of wisdom. From your perspective now, after almost working from home for 6 months, is there anything different you will do if you're given the chance to go back to March, April time frame and plan working from home environment for your company?
Beside maybe going back to renew my gym subscription, because we all gained weight in those 6 months.
You cannot go to the gym, man. Like everybody sits at home now.
I think probably the bridge between logical and physical should have been, let's say, straightened out better. I will give one example, which is e-signatures, maybe. Many companies started to ask questions how we can maintain the cycle of approvals with everyone working at home. So solutions such as document management systems, identity access management, who's responsible for what, and how to prove the, let's say, authenticity of such approvals became a big question for many companies. Whether using PKI or using e-signatures tools or document management systems, working from home now to really, let's say, negate the need for the office and to completely follow the legal processes at home, we need such tools and enablers. That would be something, that we have learned as a community from the past 6 months.
Okay, excellent, excellent. I don't know, Jordan, if we still have time for a question from the audience or not, but I have a question I will ask it, and if somebody have the time to answer it, feel free to do it. Everybody is talking about IoT now. So is there any system to ease the challenge of managing and securing IoT-based devices? And if there is any regulation actually that mandate such such a requirement for IoT?
Yeah, I noticed we were running out of time, so I posted a little short comment in the chat window. But there is an IoT regulatory policy in 2018 that Desk released. And specifically what it talks about is the management of IoT data. And it also states that IoT data cannot leave the country. That's the sort of a very quick overview. So, but definitely look that up for the regulation. In terms of what we can do, again, I think a lot of the discussion points that we've had earlier, I think pertain here as well. So make sure you know the sensors, make sure you focus on shadow IoT. There are solutions in the market, again, from not to talk about Palo Alto here, but there are solutions. I'll give you Palo Alto as one example. Our next-gen firewalls have an IoT subscription license that people can download, and it looks for rogue IoT devices and can classify and things like that. But again, there are others in the industry that you can also research. So solutions like that are important. And I think when we look at industrial control systems and OT environments that are now looking at IoT, I think there's lots of options that people can look at.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So actually, like Kamran, Haider, and Omar, really this hour was, I would say, enlightening for me. I learned a lot. I took too many notes. I want to thank you guys for your time today, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the day. And definitely we will talk soon. Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Everyone.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.